Shalom family. I'm going to be talking about a different side of our men that most people don't get a chance to hear too often. Most of the talk we hear is the negative side of things, vice versa with the women. Most of the talk we hear is the negative side. We rarely ever hear about our good men and our good women and what they contribute to our overall image as a people. Okay, when all that is being talked about is the negative side, most people tend to lean towards that being what represents all of us. Unfortunately, there's no division being made in terms of, or no difference or separation being made in terms of those who represent us in a good light versus those who represent us in a bad light. I think it's time that the women, or the daughters of Zion, the women, the so-called black women, that we start to hold our men's arms up in battle. And yes, we are in a battle. And until we realize this, we're going to keep on lollygagging through life, going back and forth, not knowing what's going on around us. It kind of reminds me of the scene of the La La Land video that we did, where so much is going on and our people are completely unaware of it, and they're allowing themselves to be engulfed in things that don't matter for the most part. But holding our men's arms up in battle it's not going to be an easy task, because there are so many things that we are faced with. Every lifestyle is different, every household is different, and so understanding the battle is the first place. When the scripture tells us to put on the whole armor, that's a good beginning point for knowing that we are in a battle. And then it also says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's letting you know that there's a spiritual battle going on, and we as the daughters of Zion have got to hold our men's arms up in battle. Vice versa, they have to do the same for us, because they are the stronger vessel, we are the weaker vessel. And the scripture also says, let the strong bear the infirmities of the weak. So all of us collectively have to hold each other's arms up in battle. We all do. But more specifically, I want to deal with those who are married, and your husband, he may be strong, okay? And there may be no issues at all in terms of how he's fighting the battle. But holding his arm up kind of goes along with, sometimes we all get weary and sometimes we all get tired. And because we've been assigned the duty as being helpmates or helpmeets to our husbands, we have to understand what it is we must do to hold his arm up in battle. Because many times our husbands hold us up. You see, they are our covering. When we cry, that's the shoulder that we cry on. And when we're not feeling the best, that's the person that we lean on. We want to make sure that we are also there for them to lean on. Whatever it is they're going through, this one thing is true, that we must pray for one another. We must love one another, support one another. And I know that, again, I said every family is different, every household is different. But if you see something that is not lining up the way it should be in your family, then it's time to switch gears and get back on track. Many times in American society, so-called black women all of us are being labeled as being loud-mouthed and out of control and non-supporting of our husbands. And I talked about that before, where the support that some people think you should give is to, pretty much step aside if your husband wants to go off track. Just let him do what he wants to do. Some people think that is one of the roles of a woman, is to say nothing if your husband is going off track. But a woman who's going to build her house, the scripture says a wise woman builds her house, and a foolish woman plucks it down with her hands. Sometimes we can appear wise in our own eyes, okay? We can believe that everything that we are doing is right, and that the formula that we have chosen is the proper formula. But the Most High can show you, if you're humble enough, He can show you that there's always room for improvement, or in some cases a complete overhaul. You see, in how we are to be as women. Humility is the key in making any change, especially if you're a strong-willed woman, or a woman who is used to having your way, so to speak, or a woman who's used to, I'm going to use the term that the world uses, wearing the pants. Because there are some women who wear the pants in their family. Now right here I want to stop and concentrate in this area for a bit. I want to bring some clarity to what it means for a woman to wear the pants in her family, or for a woman to have a strong opinion when she sees that something should be a certain way. Okay? For instance, I'm going to give you a real life example. My husband has shared this before, so I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this. I'm going to give the example, and then I'm going to talk about what the difference is in a woman wearing the pants. There was something that my husband was going through. He was having, some pain, some extreme pain in his foot or ankle, and it was so bad that he could barely walk on it. It was excruciating. It was very painful for him, and they call it gout, but it was so bad to where it was just really hard on him. I'll put it to you that way, to where he had to get crutches to walk around on. And so he had done a lot of research on the things that causes it, so that he could cut these things out of his diet. I don't even like to call it a diet. A good friend of mine, we had a conversation about that long ago. Diet, okay? Cut some things out of what he eats, okay? And there were some things that I looked up as well. And my suggestion to him was to cut this out as well. Now, for many of us, we think of this as something that's completely harmless. And I'm talking about bread that's made with yeast, okay? I suggested to him that he not eat any of that, because my daughters, they like to bake bread. And one particular time, bread was a part of our dinner, and he was going to eat some, and I said, baby, you probably shouldn't eat that because of the yeast that is in it. And he didn't agree with me. And so I was trying to get him to look at this article that I had seen, and he said, well, I've already done the research and blah, 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 okay? And I can remember getting a little upset and the reason why I got upset is because I love my husband, okay? And I don't like to see him in pain. And so I said, I tell you what, just do whatever you want to do then. And I remember going in the room, laying down, and just refusing to talk. I didn't want to talk. I was like, okay, since you're going to do what you want to do, just, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to lay down. And I was very frustrated. And when he was trying to talk to me, I was just laying there. Didn't want to talk, didn't want to respond, okay? Now, a lot of people would say, okay, now you're just being a rude, nasty wife. And I can remember even crying, because I'm like, I said, Father, what am I supposed to do? I don't want my husband to hurt, okay? And he's not listening to me on something. And so since I wasn't talking, what it prompted him to do was to look up yeast, because he doesn't like me to feel down, okay? So he said, okay. He stopped talking to me, and he went and he started to research yeast and its effects on gout. And because my husband is a humble man, he came in there and he said, baby, I'm sorry. And he called the children in, because they heard part of the conversation. Before we had closed our office door, they had heard part of the conversation of me basically contending with him about eating bread. And so I'm just going to be honest with you. I know sometimes children don't understand, and they probably thought that me as the mom was just being naggy. What's wrong with bread? Why can't Daddy have bread? And the reason why I say this is because one time we had one of our children say something of the sort. They thought that I was being a little naggy. And And so that just kind of, that's what prompted us to close the door. We said, okay, we got to keep the children out of this because they don't understand what's going on, right? So what ended up happening when my husband looked it up and saw that yeast was not something that he should be consuming too much of with the condition that his ankle was in, he called the children into the office, and then he asked me if I can join them in the office because he wanted to talk. This was after he had said, baby, I'm sorry. You were right on the yeast thing. And so we all came into the office, and my husband explained to the children in front of me that what mommy was saying about the yeast is correct, and that he probably shouldn't eat it. And he had only taken a few bites of the bread, and so he told the girls to take it away, take it into the kitchen, or let one of them have it. And I thought it was really, really awesome of him to do that for my benefit, because he knew I was feeling bad about the children hearing me contend with him over eating it in the first place. And this is why I said, okay, I'm just going to go in the room. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be silent. And I'm going to be honest with you, family. I'm having a hard time even explaining this, because I know that some people don't always understand the ups and downs, ins and outs of marriage, and that a woman should just shut up, period. But I've told my husband many times before, as it relates to him and him being here on this earth, being healthy, I said it's very important to me. My mom as well, she's with us. I've had the same conversation with her, and my mom was like, okay, you know. And so we as a family have been able to get through a lot of things. We've been able to get through a lot of things. And so he doesn't eat as much of the bread as he used to. As a matter of fact, he let time go by. A lot of times we will eat flat bread, okay? And my daughters have come up with other recipes that don't require yeast, okay? And they've also come up with other things that you can do to replace yeast. And so that's one of those things where I would say, a lot of people would say, well, I was being, trying to wear the pants, okay? That's what we were talking about. And some would understand what I'm talking about, okay? And now I'm going to give you examples of what wearing the pants is. A woman trying to wear the pants. Now, if a woman is basically just, her husband just does whatever she wants, whatever she says to do, he does it. She pretty much controls all of his movements, and she talks to him like trash, and, you know, just a number of different things going on where this man doesn't really feel like he's the man. He doesn't feel like his wife is being a helpmate, but more like a ruler, that she's, you know, pretty much ruling him and telling him what to do. And he can't really feel like he's the one who's wearing the pants in the family. And in many cases, you have men that are in this situation where they literally just allow it because they want to keep their marriage together. They don't really want their marriage to fall apart. So they will just let the woman move about in that capacity, okay? And like I said, we're not talking about a woman who's trying to help her husband to get over a hurdle that's in his life. We're talking about a woman who controls every aspect of his life. He does this, he does that. I'll give a good example. I've seen cases where there are women who won't even do anything. I mean, they do absolutely nothing. Their husband does it all. The cooking, the washing of clothes, everything, running the children here and there. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. And the woman offers no help in that direction whatsoever. I've seen cases like that. I can remember years ago, this person that we know has some health problems himself, and his wife doesn't. And this person does it all I mean, to the point of, not even hardly being able to stand, but he's taking care of the dishes, the clothes, everything. And there's absolutely no respect that the wife has for this person. It doesn't even seem like there's love there, okay? And so that's not holding your man's arm up in battle if you're putting everything on him. You are laying everything on him. Things that you are supposed to be doing, he is doing. You take no part in it. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that we want to be as wives. We want to hold our man's arm up in battle. If he feels sick, if he feels weak, you want to be there. You want to love him. You want to make sure that he knows he's loved. I love it when my husband says, "I know that you love me." I love to hear him say that, because he knows, And he even knew when I was contending with him about the yeast. He said, "I know that you did this because you love me. Because you love me." Yes, because I love you, that is why I did that. I'm not saying that our marriage has been perfect, okay? We've talked about this before. My husband is much older than I am. And because of that, we came into this marriage with him having a great deal of control. I'm the man type thing, and that's how it started off. I'm the man, and do what I say do, pretty much. I don't think I've ever shared any of that on this channel. Most of this I share, or we've talked about, my husband and I both have talked about on our ministry channel. But on this channel, I've never really shared that. But that's how our marriage started off, because I was very young when we met. I was very young when we met. And my husband was well into manhood. And so he already had a certain thought process or thought pattern or way of thinking that was already established. And so here I am, this young woman, trying to fit into that. He was 29 when we met, and I was 19. And so there's a big age gap there. And so that's part of what I was attracted to. I was attracted to the authority that he had, and the way he spoke, the way he taught. That was all very impressive to me, to have a man who understood the Bible the way my husband did, and how he spoke with great authority in Scripture. All of that was very impressive to me. And even the amount of control that he had in terms of commanding a conversation, I was attracted to that. And so over the years, when we finally got married, my husband started to project some of that control in the marriage in a way that made me uncomfortable. And, down to, certain things that were, when we would go to talk about certain things, before I can even get my side out or give an opinion, he would just basically shut it down. And I started to feel a little frustrated, especially on some things. And we talked about an incident that happened after we got married, where I wanted to paint our living room a particular color, and he wasn't feeling the color, and he made a really big deal out of that. And he said the Most High spoke to him and said, "Let this woman paint this house. Let her do her job. Let this woman paint the room the color she wants." And I was really, really pleased, because he began to understand. He said, "Look, this woman is decorating the house." At the time, he worked for, I forget the company he worked for. As a matter of fact, we may have already transitioned into real estate at this time. As a matter of fact, I think we did. So he wasn't even working for this company anymore. But he was working a lot on our properties, in which I was too. I would go there and I would help him hold the drywall up. I would help him mud and do whatever needed to be done in our properties. Help lay floors and hang cabinets, hang windows, whatever it is I could do. I was there to help my husband do that. I was there to help him, or help to hold up his arm in doing those things. And so my husband began to step back a little, say, "I'm going to at least listen to her." Because, he says, "My wife has a lot of great ideas, and it doesn't make any sense that I'm shutting all these ideas down and causing friction in the house." And again, I understand that some brothers would just as soon say, "Look, woman, just shut up. You have nothing to say. Women are supposed to be seen and not heard." My husband didn't take that attitude. he saw the sadness in my eyes many times when we would, if I would come to him with any idea and he wouldn't want to hear me. He saw the sadness in my eyes, and that bothered him. Like I said, we have gone through a lot of things. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. My husband is not perfect. We've gone through a lot of things in our marriage, and we've grown to this point in our marriage to where we know that we don't want to be without each other. This is why I want to take care of my husband health-wise. He wants to take care of me. This is why we started our quest towards land, so that we can grow more of the food that we need, and unbusy our lives with other things as much. I mean, ministry is always going to be the way it is, but we would like to try our best to unbusy our lives by joining with others to grow food and raise livestock and things of that nature, so that we can take care of ourselves a lot better. This year, here's a good example. Our garden this year, we didn't spend as much time because we were so busy with events, with other projects. I mean, we have the garden going right now, but there are a lot of empty beds right now. A lot of empty beds. We haven't tended to the garden as well as we could have this year because we've been on the go a lot this year, doing a lot of different things that basically took a lot of our time in terms of preparation. We have projects that we are backed up on, and as a family we talk about these things and what can we do to resolve this. How can we, because even our children are extremely busy. We decided as a family that we're going to get things together so that we can be around a lot longer, so my mom could be around a lot longer, so my husband and I could be around a lot longer for our children. So we're going to do whatever is necessary to hold up my husband's arm as he leads this family. Now, there are things too that I would say that my husband was absolutely right on. You know, things that we've tried to do, like one example we gave before is there was a particular house I wanted to buy. It was a duplex in Detroit. I wanted to buy this when we were real estate investors. And my husband, when we looked at the house, he looked at the foundation of that house and he says, we can't get this one. He says the foundation is crumbling, and sometimes foundation problems can cost thousands of dollars to repair. And that wouldn't even include all the other repairs that the house needed. So he said, we're going to pass on this one. And I was looking at the structure of the house, you know, the top part and all the other stuff. It was a brick duplex and it looked nice. And not one word came out of my mouth that was in opposition to what he said, because when I listened to what he said about the foundation and the cost to repair it, I looked at the house and I said, okay, you're right. You're absolutely right. I understand. And so we drove away from that one. We didn't get that one. And so, again, there are times when my husband is just right on target, and there's nothing that I can say. Nothing I can say at all. But there are other times where I may be feeling a certain way, and we made an agreement a long time ago that my husband would allow me to get it out, to explain things before he shuts it down and say no. You see, it took some time for us to adjust to each other. You know, especially with me being much younger than him and him having this already established way as a man. It took some adjusting because I was very sensitive back then. It didn't take much for me to cry. You know what I'm saying? Especially when, this is a man that I love. This is a man that I'm having children with. So if he says no to something that I know is a good idea, and one good example was the real estate. We talked about that too. We only have $500 to our name, give or take a few pennies, right? A little bit above that. And I remember there was a real estate convention where this guy was going to be teaching people about real estate. And we were just so poor at that time to where it was very frustrating, and it was stress and strain on both of us. And so what ended up happening was I said, baby, He came home from work, and I said, baby, there's a real estate convention in downtown Detroit, and it's a seminar, should I say, and I wanted to go to it. I want us to go. It costs $500 to go, and they're going to be teaching this, that, and the other. And my husband, at first, he was like, he didn't agree at first. But then that's one of those things where I said, baby, look, I said, we have nothing to lose. I said, this $500 is not going to do anything for us. I said, this is it, you know. And we were really struggling. His job wasn't doing much of anything at all. I said, we got to give this a try. We got to give this a try. And this time he sat and he thought for a moment before he said no. He sat and he thought for a moment. And he came back and he said, okay, I agree. Let's do this. And the rest is history. We went down there and we met someone. It's funny that it didn't actually come through the seminar itself. We got the information and the booklet and all that from the seminar, but it wasn't that did it. It was this old Gentile, this old white man in his 80s that we met there. I don't even know why this man walked up to us at all. I have no idea why. But he ended up inviting us to his office in Oakland County. I believe it was in Southfield. And his name was Mr. Sutter. We went and we spoke to him, and he told us so much information. I mean, this man had us there for hours just telling us all kinds of good stuff. I mean, we learned so much from this man. It was a trip. And right away, we said, okay, we're going to take this knowledge and we're going to apply it. So we dove in head first, you know. We didn't dive in head first right away. We talked to some of our family and friends, in which many of them were not ready to get into this. So at that point, we dove in because we weren't waiting on anyone. We didn't have time to deal with fear because my husband's job just wasn't cutting it at that time. And me I was a stay-at-home mom, so there was no income coming in from me either. So this allowed us a chance to get our feet wet in an industry that could prove to be very, very lucrative. And so we decided to go ahead and do this thing, and again, the rest is history. The rest is history. The important thing is we as a family were able to work through some major things to overcome some major obstacles in order to make our family work. But I didn't mean to go this long on this video. I just want to make sure that women know that it's important that we uphold our husband's arms. You know, I'm not saying uphold him in foolishness. I'm not saying that at all. Okay, if your husband is doing something foolish, you better pray. Okay, you better pray. But if your husband is leading your family according to Torah, and he's doing what he's supposed to do as a man, and he is supporting his family, but you just happen to be one of those women who just can't get with the program, it's time for you to pray. It's time for you to pray that yourself can be in alignment, that you can align yourself with your position as a woman and not try to be in his position. There's definitely a difference in a woman who has an opinion and a woman who is basically wearing the pants, okay? There is a big difference. A woman should always attempt to relinquish the control to her husband. You know, there is even a way to do it. If you have an opinion or an idea about something, there's still a way to do this to where the man himself can feel he can feel even in control even in those situations. You know, what is an example I can use in that? What is a good example I can use in that? Okay, when we wanted to move, I just shared with my husband what the Most High had showed me. And when it was time to move, the house was his choice. Okay? My quest was to get out of debt. And at the time, the house that we were living in, it was costing way too much. And so I just talked to my husband about my grievance about that, and that it just doesn't feel right to pay all of this money to live in a house every month, to have this obligation over your head. And for a minute, he didn't like the idea. He's like, well, I put all this time and this work in this house. I just remodeled the basement and all of this stuff. But then the Most High began to show him that being in debt in the way that we were, being so busy, having to be so busy just to maintain it all, the Most High showed him that that wasn't the life that we were supposed to be living. Being in debt and trying to make ends meet. And at the time, we weren't struggling. We were doing good in our business, but it seemed like everything we were making was going to upkeep this house, and that just didn't seem realistic. It just didn't seem realistic. And so we decided that, okay, it is time to move. Okay, working this hard makes no sense. Making good money only to pay it out. To me, that's struggling. It's struggling to me. Even though you're making enough money to make the payments, it's still struggling. You see, because everything you're making is pretty much going to make the payment. So does that make sense at all? And so when we decided to move, my husband chose the house. And that was that. And so, like I said, things haven't always flowed smoothly in our marriage. And it took some growing and it took some time. And not saying that even now things run smoothly. Every so often, like the bread incident, that was something that was recent, that was last year. You see, every so often things do come up, okay? But nonetheless, we as a couple, we said we're going to let the Most High be glorified in our marriage. We want him to be glorified, so we're going to sit down and we're going to talk to each other. We're going to make up. We're not going to let the sun go down on anything that we're feeling. We're going to love each other. We're going to say I love you before the night is over. Whatever it takes to mend any friction, we are the two that have to make that happen. You see, this is our relationship. We have built this family together, so we have to keep it together. And we have to know when the enemy is trying to do something. We have to be able to identify that. It could be something really simple that the enemy can use in any marriage to try to cause friction. And we as women, we want to make sure that it's not us. You as men, you want to make sure that it's not you. It's very important that everyone realizes their part in all of this and make sure that they are going to do their part in order to make things run smoothly. Knowing how to identify the work of the enemy, because the enemy comes from many different angles. It doesn't just have to be outside of your house. You know, the workplace drama that can cause you to have friction and bring that home. It could be things that are in your house, something that's starting off small and then it builds up. For instance, if a man feels like his wife is just not as submissive as she should be, if he does feel like she's wearing the pants, guess what's going to happen? After a while, that male dominance is going to kick in, and he's going to put his foot down and say, look, enough is enough. That's if you're in a righteous household. Now, what happens in some cases, the man just walks out the door. He just say, forget it, I can't do this no more. I can't take this no more. I'm getting tired of this. But in a case where the man is righteous and he wants to make it work, he's going to have to put his foot down. And this woman is going to have to understand that if you want this marriage to work, that you're going to have to step back and stop trying to wear the pants. Now, I'm not talking about a woman who has an opinion about something that the man may not see at a particular time. I'm talking about a woman trying to wear the pants and being just complete control over their marriage. Okay. Let's hold our men's arms up in battle. Okay. That's what we have to do. And much of that battle and much of that holding up of the arms involves prayer, and it involves patience. Okay. Because we're living in a world that puts so much pressure on all of us to where it can be difficult at times to step back from a situation. Because sometimes if a man comes home from work and he's stressed out, the best thing we can do as women sometimes is to just let that man have a moment of silence. I remember when my husband was working, and before we had our own business, they would put him through a lot of stress on different jobs that he's had. And sometimes we would talk about it on the cell phone. He would call me on the cell phone during his lunch break, and we would talk about it a little then. But then I would know that the kind of pressure that these people are putting him under, sometimes let him come home and rest. And the reason why I know this is because early in our marriage, he had said this. I was very young, so I was very sensitive, Early in our marriage, he had said, one time he came home, he said, let me just rest before we talk, okay? Let me just rest. And I can remember being offended and hurt. Very sensitive. But then as I got older, I said, okay, I'm gonna let him rest before we talk, Let him come home, lay his head down, and collect his thoughts first before you start talking, okay? And I even explained to him one time, I said, well, the difference is, I said, you've been gone all day, and I've been here all day, silent. At the time, we only had 2 children, so it's like me and 2 children, and he's gone, so I am there silent, not talking to anyone, except dealing with the children on children's level, right? And so, of course, when he comes home, I'm ready to talk because I've already been silent all day. But he's been working and he's tired. And so the compromise was, look, it makes sense. He's tired. I know I've been here silent all day. Can't wait for him to get home because I'm anxious to talk, But in being realistic, if he said this to me years ago, now I understand. It's okay. Let him rest first, then we can talk, you see. So there's been a lot of balancing out that has happened in our marriage. That's my best friend. My husband is my best friend. I'm his best friend. I absolutely love my husband. I love his company. I love talking to him. And we love doing things together. And so we hold each other up. My husband said to me, he said, baby, I couldn't do any of this without you. And I said, baby, I couldn't do any of this without you. We need each other. We would both be just incomplete without each other. Incomplete. I'm glad my husband wears the pants. I'm also glad that he allows me to say my piece. I'm glad that he's allowing me to speak, okay? It didn't start off that way. It didn't start off that way. And I think it was easier. The reason why it wasn't that way because I was much younger, and so there's a thought there already that oh, she's young, you know what I'm saying, so how could she possibly know this, right? And so my husband soon learned a lot of different things, and which we're gonna do a more in-depth talk about our family and our union on our family channel. I just wanted to do this. I wasn't even trying to talk about all of this. I'm talking about holding up your man's arm in battle. The best thing we can do in this spiritual battle is to make sure that we are praying, because there are many things that I have prayed for and I've seen the manifestation of in my husband, and I thank the Father for that. And I ran across one of his old prayer journals one day when I was cleaning up. And I've seen many of his prayers answered. I've seen many of his prayers answered. I told him that I read the journal. I was curious, and I've seen many of those prayers answered. And I thank the Father because I was in that journal. And I've seen the manifestation of some of the things that my husband prayed for as it relates to me. And I'm so grateful that he prays for me. And he prays for our children. Vice versa, I pray for my husband, and I pray for our children. I pray for my family in general. I pray for you all. My husband prays for you all. It's very important that we all pray for one another and hold one another up. It's very important. We love the family of Israel, and the enemy, he wants to bring all these contentions. He wants to bring all of this. He doesn't want us loving each other. He doesn't want us holding each other up. He wants us divided so he can conquer us. That's what the enemy wants, but we can't give him what he wants. We got to fight the number one enemy that we have, which is ourselves first, okay? Because our own selves will allow us to be in alignment with the enemy. You understand what I'm saying? Even in a marriage, sometimes the men will allow themselves to be open to the suggestions of Satan, and women as well, okay? Well, I hope I have said something that will be a blessing to anyone, whether you're married or single. We have to hold each other up. We have to love one another. We have to understand that this battle is very real. And I didn't get a whole lot into the spiritual battle aspect of it because we've done lessons on that before. You can go to the Watch Me Reports channel to look up those lessons dealing with battle, spiritual warfare. We wrestle not against flesh and blood and all this stuff. You can get the details and scriptures from there. This is just me talking on my channel, okay? And you can take from it whatever you want. I hope it's a blessing to you because I love you, family. I want to see all of us make it. Whether you're someone who is grafted into the family of Israel or whether you're an Israelite directly, I want to see us make it because I love you. And this is going to be a tough battle, okay? This is an uphill battle when you don't have the full truth. When you're not armed with the truth, this is an uphill battle. But Yahushua says this, and I'm going to leave you with these words. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, because my yoke is easy and my burdens are light. If you take his yoke upon you, your path and your journey will be a lot easier. And with that, I will say shalom, family.